Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of TTP at Home. Now, normally we only come to you just once a month, and we literally just recorded September's podcast just a few days ago. But when I was on my way home from that recording, I got a call from someone about the J6 fight, and I immediately told Fran that we have to do a special episode. Now, you'll notice that we are not in our studio; we are all at our homes because our guests today are actually on house arrest. So here we are. Let's get right to it.
So our special guests today are Mark and Jaleese Middleton. They live in North Texas and were at the Capitol on January 6th, 2021. And trying to do some conservative things. I think I remember him saying that they were offering prayer. But in April, after that, they were arrested. They have been fighting that battle ever since. So that's what we're going to hear today is about their story. So please welcome Mark and Jaleese.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so guys, I really want to back up and make sure everyone, a lot of people have already heard your story because you've spoken at different True Texas Project meetings and other places as well. But a lot of people haven't heard your story, and it is so important that they do. So the first time I heard your story, I was not just stunned, I was shaken by it. Okay. So, I donated and I said, we've got to get this message out. We've got to get them on this tour to speak at all of our locations and such, because I couldn't believe what was happening in America. And I know you can relate to that. But here we are 3.5 years later, and the story isn't done. It's still going on. And what's worse, when I go on to like our Facebook page or whatever on social media, and I say something about J6 or we've posted a meme or something, people on our side will respond and say, well, they shouldn't have done what they did. And, it's really unfortunate. So I want you to start at the very beginning. Tell us what happened on January 6th.
Can I interrupt real quick? Yeah, because just getting ready for this, I just read the Department of Justice account of your arrest and your trial. And it's a very different account than I've heard you, Mark, talk about. So it was pretty scary what I just read.
Well, one thing we've learned through this is the government can make up anything they want and they can lie all they want, but you cannot lie to them. Even if you're not speaking to them directly, if you say something incorrect, it is considered a lie and it is prosecutable.
The devastation in this, and this is where we have the failure even on the Republican Party side, is that nobody wants to do their research. Mm-hmm. They simply want to get on and be spoon-fed what the government's telling them. Yep. Well, your government was taken over on November 3rd of 2020 with a stolen election, and they have already infiltrated our legal system. They have infiltrated through threats our Congress. And the media and everybody. So you're being told what they want you to know. And you can even go back on the media to the Obama administration when they legalized being able to lie and press propaganda and when all this started. But as Americans, we have been in such a comfort zone in our country that it was okay to listen to the media to get the truth of a story because they had to present both sides of it. They couldn't put their opinion in it. They had to source their data. And now they don't have to do any of that. So now you're being told what they want you to be told, just like in Venezuela and any other country. Only we are not using our own mind to develop a conclusion from this. I'll give a fantastic example. What the DOJ says about me and Mark, none of that come out in trial.
Yep.
If that's their story, why could they not back that up with facts? Why can I present a video showing our story, which we'll be happy to provide? I get excited at the opportunity. And then you'd be able to question, why is this not a self-defense case? Well, we were allowed to present a self-defense argument, which is beautiful. because most January 6th defendants even get denied that
So
opportunity.
I want to back up though, because half the people listening don't even know what you're talking about. So
Right.
let's start with the story, and then we'll get into how crazy the Department of Justice is.
I love for people to see both sides, though, to start it with, here's what's been going on. Now, here's our story, because I want you to decide for yourself, for sure.
So we did go to January 6th, and we were on the west side of the Capitol after Trump got done speaking, or actually he was in the middle of his speech. We left to head to the Capitol because there was supposed to be 5 other permitted rallies that day around the Capitol. And Jaleese, being disabled, a typical J6 disabled grandmother, we wanted to get as close as we could this time because we were out by the Washington Monument, and that's a long ways away from the White House. So we got there, and there were already, all the barricades that were there that morning were gone. Thousands and thousands of people up on the west lawn. So we went up onto the west lawn and we started making our way towards the front. We made it all the way to the police barricade line where the police were at. And we stopped there and we spoke with the Capitol Police that were on the line for a few minutes. I don't even know how long. And then we decided to huddle in prayer. And I turned my back to the police line and we began to pray for our nation, because that's the only thing. We'd never been to a protest before, so that's the only thing we knew to do was to pray.
And people, let me interrupt here. People always ask us, well, why did you go in the first place? You shouldn't have went to the Capitol. So let me explain to your listeners why. I mean, not only our personal agenda, but you need to understand that entire day of January 6th, there were planned protests with planned speakers all around the entire grounds, okay? So there were due to be speakers at the Capitol that we were there to listen to, friends of ours that we knew. So I wanted a front row seat, and being disabled, it was going to be a seat because everything's standing, but I had a little stool that Mark was dragging around for me to sit. Well, if you're sitting and 2 million people are standing in front of you, you're not going to see anything. So we wanted up to the very front to be able to sit and hear the speakers and me not get tripped all over.
Sure.
So while we were praying, I don't know how long we were in prayer, but occasionally we would get bumped into the barricade, and we tried to stay several feet away from the barricade because the police told us not to touch the barricade. And while being typical law-abiding people, we tried to oblige.
And the majority of the time, we were more than 5 feet away from the barricade.
And at some point, I felt a strike on my back, and Jaleese, I heard her yell out, and she pulled her hand off of my shoulder, and she opened her eyes and realized that the police were beating me in the back with a club. And she jumped in to try to save me or try to protect me. And that's when I turned around, and the police had her in their grasp, trying to pull her over the barricade. And the whole time they were also, I didn't know it at the time, but they were striking her with a club. They were still striking me with clubs. And I was trying to extricate her from the police grabbing her. And eventually the crowd came and basically just grabbed us and yanked us away from the line. And all of that is on very clear overhead video. But, then we left the Capitol grounds at that point. And while the people were pulling us away from the police, they pepper sprayed us. What we didn't know at the time is that Jaleese had her scarf double wrapped around her neck because it was cold that day, if you were there. And one of the officers had a hold of her scarf, choking her out. And we didn't know that at the time. We know that now because of all the discovery that we've had.
So as I'm trying to escape them, I can't escape because the scarf is going tighter and tighter. So Mark's trying to unhand the police officer off of my scarf. I'm choking out. I can remember feeling like I was going to pass out. I could not remember them choking me until my attorney brought it up in the video. Are you getting choked with your scarf? And I almost just had a complete meltdown because all of a sudden it all come back to me of not being able to breathe and them trying to pull me over the barricades.
And, there's so many things that we know now that I didn't know when I was speaking at True Texas Project because of the discovery. And this whole episode was about 5 to 10 seconds long. So a lot happened very, very quickly. And, your mind cannot necessarily grasp traumatic things that are happening very quickly.
But during that, while they were still holding my scarf and the crowd rips us back out from the police line, he is still holding my scarf. And you see, when I get ripped away from him, he gets pulled through the barricades himself from holding me so tight. And while still holding my scarf and holding me down, he leans in and sprays me within like a foot or two of my face with pepper spray. Even though the threat was already dispersed, it was already eliminated. If you wanted to call me a threat, it was already over, and he still come in retaliatory and sprayed.
And Fran, you brought up a good point about reading the government documents on what happened, and they claim that we fought with the cops and we struck, or that Jaleese struck a cop, that I was beating them with a flagpole. Yet none of that is in any of the videos, nor did they mention any of that during trial. None of that was brought up. So that's another part of the government can make up any story they want and lie all they want. And it's perfectly legal.
They knew they didn't have any evidence of that. And where they're getting the flagpole thing is we even struggled with it, because in one of the videos, you see like this flag, this flag comes between us and the police officer. And it looks like Mark's hand is near it. Only Mark, his hand had a red glove on it, where he didn't have red gloves. So we couldn't figure out what the deal was either. So we prepared for it for trial, assuming they're going to accuse him of this.
Never did.
And they never did, because they knew it wasn't his hand. But what they did do is, once convicting us on all charges, they then come along and tried to throw it in there in their reasoning to the judge why we should go to prison. And even though they had not a shred of evidence for it, they still try to bring it in anyway. And same with me. At one point, they tried to, during the trial, accuse me of grabbing the officer's jacket. And they show a picture where you can see my hand in the same scene with his arm. And said, "Are you grabbing his jacket?" And I said, "No, I'm not." Because what it was is he had a hold of my arms, and what you're seeing is this portion of the video with my hand rested.
What you don't see is his hand wrapped around her arm, about
holding me
near her elbow.
So,
and the police openly perjured themselves. We had 3 police officers testify in trial, and they were all DC Metro. They perjured themselves over and over, to the point the jury was laughing at them. It was that clear on video of them claiming, "Oh, I didn't do that right there. That's not your hand. That's not your,
He denied grabbing my scarf, even though they caught it in not only several body cam angles, but from an aerial view where my scarf is straight out. And, my attorney did a slide by slide, frame by frame. And he's like, "That's not you. That's not the scarf's
tassels hanging out of your hand. Nope, that's not my hand. I'm not holding her scarf."
And he held his ground, even though at the end of that little frame by frame video, it shows when he releases his hand, you see his hand open, you see the tail of the scarf flick up in the air, and you see my head whip back from him letting go of me. And he said, "You still want to say that you weren't holding her scarf?" And he's like, "That's right." And the jurors chuckled.
What do you think motivated them to lie like that?
I think they've done it on 1,500 January 6th defendants is what I think.
Yeah. Well, I still want to back up, though, because we're back to the lawsuit now, and I want to get the story. So they've pepper sprayed you. You're released. You can escape, so to speak. And then what happened?
We go back after Jaleese could see again. We were both hit with pepper spray. She was a direct hit. She's blind in one eye, and it was her good eye that got hit, direct hit. So We went to a little area. I want to call it a triage area, but it was a little area. People gave us a bunch of water and stuff. We were quite a ways away from the front line. And after she could see well enough, we went on back to the hotel room. And that's where we found out that people had went into the Capitol. That's where we found out that Ashley Babbitt had been shot, been murdered. And after that, the rest of the day was totally normal. Other than the city was in lockdown and we were in our hotel room, but no further incidences. The next day we flew home, no further incidences. And then, 4 months later, April 21st of 21, we had a full-blown SWAT raid at our house with 2 SWAT teams, Joint Terrorism Task Force, bunch of FBI agents, all of that. They carted us off to jail. And
wait, describe that, because that's a very compelling story with the...
This is huge. Honestly, it's what we usually start out telling as a story and then back up and say, now here's what they're saying we did on January 6th. So I'll let Mark start because they got him first.
Yeah. So we live on a farm up near Gainesville, Texas. And as I drove off the farm onto the gravel road to head to work, I seen an MRAP coming towards me. And an MRAP, if you don't know, is a armored assault vehicle that SWAT teams and even the military uses. One of those was coming towards me with a guy hanging out of it with an automatic weapon, an M4. And then 2 black Suburbans pop out from behind it with guys hanging out of it with M4s. And the whole time I'm thinking, when I seen the MRAP, I thought, that's weird, because you don't see them out here.
That's weird.
And then I seen the 2 black Suburbans, and I thought, well, that's really weird. And then I look in my rear view mirror, and here comes 2 more black Suburbans behind me, same way, with guys hanging out of it with weapons. And so, like any rational human, I stop and see what they want, fully comply with all of their commands. As I'm getting out of my car and walking towards the 2 agents calling me to them, out of the MRAP, they throw a flashbang grenade at me, at my feet. And I stop and I look back at that MRAP and I said, seriously? And as I continued on to the 2 agents, I asked him, I said, why did they do that? And he said, Washington told us to do it this way. And then as they're arresting me, I was, what is this about? And they said, your involvement in January 6th. And I kind of giggled. And I asked them for an arrest warrant. And they said they didn't have to show it to me. And that's true. Federal government does not have to show you an arrest warrant or a search warrant. We found that out.
I didn't know that.
Yep, they do not. They don't even have to have a search warrant to search your place. They can get it after the fact, by the way. They wouldn't show me any of that. And he finally produced a clipboard with a piece of paper on it and wouldn't let me see it and wouldn't let me hold it. They put me in shackles, in feet shackles, and they also cuffed my hands down to my waist. And as they're putting me in the car, they asked where she's at. And I said, that, she's at home still getting ready, and asked them to call her because she not only carried every morning for her work, but I didn't want them to bust down my house, tear up my house, kill my dogs, and injure my wife. And so the rest of the team all took off to come on to the farm. And that's her part of the story.
So while I was getting ready, I get a phone call and I ignored it. I was running late for work. And they immediately call back again, and that flagged me. Okay, something's wrong. So I answer it, and it's a woman on the other line that says, we have your husband. This is FBI. Come out with your hands up. Well, of course, you don't have a category for that trash. All I can think of is I live out in the sticks. So I'm thinking either somebody has kidnapped my husband for ransom, which really is hilarious because we're dirt poor. But, your brain just goes in crazy places. Either that has happened or, someone's trying to dupe me, right? And so I'm kind of pacing in the bathroom like, what do I do? What do I do? I didn't want to go out because then they'll see me in the windows if it's legitimate. And so I pace for a minute, and finally I start to head out. And right there on the edge of my dresser, which is right at the bathroom, door, I don't know if I looked over at my gun or if I grabbed, went to reach for it. I'm not sure which I did. I know the thought was in my head. I remember the thought being there, like, I'm going to have to fight for my husband. I don't know what to do. I don't want to get shot, but if this is legit. I got to protect myself and him.
Yeah.
And so anyway, whatever I did, whatever action it was, that woman on the other end of the line said, "Do not touch that gun. Come out with your hands up now." And that's when I realized, okay, this is for real. Only the FBI would know what I'm doing right now. I'm inside my house. So I immediately come out in the living room. I still to this day don't understand that. Like, I still don't know how she knew. I don't know what technology they used. They did have a drone that day. Maybe it was flying around a window. I don't know. It might be they just knew where it was, and perfect timing was like, don't do, I don't know. So I go to my front door, and as soon as I open it, they fly a drone right past my head into the house. And so I come out holding my phone and my hands up, and I have to weave around the tank. They have a tank parked, that MRAP parked on my handicap ramp with the battering ram at my door. So I had to weave my way around that to get around down the ramp. And there's federal agents going everywhere. They've got guns pointed at me. They've got 2 SWAT teams, and they throw a flashbang grenade in the background somewhere. I thought it was a gunshot from like a neighbor, but come to find out it was the flashbang. And I go down and I hand him my cell phone and I ask for a search warrant. And he's like Mark said, I don't have to show you one. I said, oh, you do and you will. You're in my house right now with that drone. And so he walks me and sets me on the bumper of one of the SWAT trucks. And he starts raffling through a clipboard. And I said, I need to see a search warrant. Well, he just holds it up and he's like 5 feet away. And I said, I can't see that. And he walks about 3 steps closer. And I go to reach for it, and he jerks it away from me. And I said, I can't see that. I wear glasses. He sends an agent in my house on my nightstand. So now they're in there again to get my glasses to bring to me. And as soon as I put them on, I can at least see the house numbers because numbers print a little bigger. And I knew that it was for my house and the rent house next door to me. And so anyway, at that point, I just started complying. I realized, okay, whatever's happening, I felt like there was a misunderstanding. I thought as soon as this all gets cleared up, this is going to be a story of stories. And, but I was mad too, because I'm like, the audacity of you. So anyway, they put me in handcuffs and they haul me off to jail. Mark's in another vehicle behind us, and they take us to Collin County jail. After they get us booked in, we spend the night there. And at 6:45, somewhere around then, they brought us in for our arraignment hearing. I learned all these nice fancy terms I didn't know before. But we go there. They already had a public defender there to represent us. And we played not guilty, and they let us go home on our own accord. So we're so daggum dangerous to have that tank and all them guns pointed at us and 22 federal agents. And then they're like, have a nice day.
Be good. Contact the judge. And
no bond. No, we had rules to stay in the northern and eastern districts of Texas. And that was pretty much it. No guns in the house. They had my kids come get all the guns out. That was it. That was our only, and it just seemed so ridiculous. It's such overkill that I was just like, either we're still getting pranked, like they're going to teach us a lesson. Shame on you for standing up. And it did not make sense from what we experienced. The sick part of it is I really thought, naively, I thought I was showing that police officer mercy, that I didn't file charges on him that day. I thought I was being the nice guy, thinking he's under a lot of stress. There's 2 million people there. They knew they could have quickly been overtaken, and he just had a freak out moment. Give him a break. I thought that, and then they come and attack me. And it's been the most.
And now we know so much more about that day.
So much. We're just one of thousands. Yeah. And I can't say everybody is as innocent. My attorney told me that he had dealt with 14 different January 6th defendants. He said, of everybody, yours is the highest I've seen of winning. You're the most innocent I've ran across to date. He was shocked. Like, he had been treating me kind of not poorly, but you could tell he thought I was guilty. He's just doing his job. And he called me on a Sunday night and he goes, I don't know how to say this, and I'm sorry for calling you on a Sunday night, but I finally got all the discovery.
Or some of the discovery at that point.
The body cams. Yeah. And it said, I just want to tell you I'm sorry. I judged you early. So I know that it doesn't matter for any January 6th defendant what they did that day. Because they're going to get their narrative on you. They're going to pin it to you, and they're going to imprison you for having the nerve to stand up to our government. And this was a plot from day one. I see it so clear now. It was a plot from day one.
And there's, for those who are still naysayers about January 6th, or make the comment, Fran, like you mentioned, that they shouldn't have been there anyway. You should have been there, because there was fraud clearly perpetrated, and you not being there and just saying, doing the typical American thing, seeing it on TV and saying someone should do something about that. Well, why weren't you there doing something about that?
Amen.
And, there's so many documentaries and everything else that are out now. There's no excuse to plead ignorance on January 6th. Within 6 months, the documentary Capital Punishment come out, which documented that day very well. We now know that Ashley Babbitt was cold-blooded murdered, shot by
Michael Byrd.
And then we also know now about Roseanne Boylan being beat to death by D.C. Metro Police. By Lila Morris. We know of Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillips that were both killed with flashbang grenades as they were just randomly lobbing them out in the crowd. We know that. We know
that they used deadly force repeatedly without the threat of death, which is against their own policy manuals. They did for me and Mark. I don't care what we're doing. Let's just say we got up against the barricades. Let's say we refused to move. Let's just play out any scenario you want. Was that deadly force to justify them beating us about the shoulder and head with a baton? No. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I can sit here and tell you we did not do those things, and the body cam will verify that. But it's still irrelevant. They were still in the wrong by doing that.
I think something that I tend to compare it to is, okay, so let's say you did do what they are accusing you of doing, just like you said, even though we know you didn't do anything wrong. I want to be clear. But how... Let's talk about BLM, right? So they've done horrible, proven things, all kinds of violence and crime and destruction, and nothing happens to them. And yet we have two people that were at the White House praying, getting beaten on the back and pepper sprayed. And how many thousands of dollars have you had in fines? Let's talk about your whole court process.
So we finally went to trial in February. This past February. So
wait, how long was that after?
Right at almost 3 years.
Okay.
2 years and 10 months.
And so during that 2 years and 10 months, you can come and go. You have to stay at home. Yes. What's going on at that point?
Our restrictions were we couldn't have a weapon, whatever that was, and we couldn't get anyone to define it, including the judge. And we had to give notice to travel. We couldn't travel outside of the United States, but we had to give notice to go out of the northern or eastern districts of Texas. And that only consisted of, like many times, we've been all over the country. But, going up to Oklahoma, we could see the Oklahoma sign, and it's not far from our house anyway. But all we had to do was just send a text message or a voicemail to our parole officer saying, hey, we're going to be in, Wichita, Kansas for 3 or 4 days. She'd send back, okay, have fun. We just had to give notice.
So we've used this time, instead of focusing on just us and, letting the enemy in our head to drive us crazy, we decided, you know what, we're already on this hook. We are going to use this to start a foundation and help the other January 6th defendants. Awesome. And that's what we did. So we formed AmericanPatriotRelief.org. And we went into this full on going out, telling our story, telling the truth of January 6th, the deaths that they're covering up, the suicides that they're conveniently calling suicide. There's been a trail of damage. And we talk about that, and we fundraise for the January 6th defendants and hand it back out to them.
When I was speaking for True Texas Project, going around, at the time we had private attorneys and we were trying to raise funding to pay for them, $250,000. When we formed American Patriot Relief, we fired them and went with public defenders so that we didn't need money for ourselves.
We had already figured out nobody's getting out of this. They are going to take the scalp of every single January 6th defendant, period, in the story, irrelevant of what the story is. Paying lawyers, having private lawyers is nothing but throwing money in the trash. Wow. So what we decided to do with American Patriot Relief is be the safety net for J6 families. Whatever they needed, we did not do defense funds. Beyond that, we have bought cars, we've fixed cars, we've bought diapers, house payments, pulled houses out of foreclosure, the whole 9 yards. Anything they needed is what we took care of. Early on, we were paying for them to go to and from DC. We now have another organization that has stood up that takes care of that part, which takes a lot of load off of us so we can do more of the social side of it. But so we stayed in this battle and stood our ground. I've got so many God stories in this where I just feel like me and Mark were called to this. Yeah. When we started looking at the mindset of other January 6th defendants, we realized we were in such a spiritually better place. And we just decided we're going to war. We're standing up for truth. I'm not backing down. You do what you feel like you can sleep on your pillow doing, and my Father's going to redeem every tear and every drop of blood you cause.
So we have had, it's odd to say, but I think over the last 3.5 years, we have had more fun than the last 35 years of our marriage.
Put together, I think.
That's such a testimony. Like,
I know.
It's amazing. It has to be a God thing, because how else do we find joy in the midst of this?
It's been a ball, and we have met thousands upon thousands of people, not only True Texas Project, but all over this nation. She is the main communicator, so she gets text messages all the time from people all around the country saying, I'm praying for y'all. How's your case going? What's this? And, we've done a lot of crazy things. We drove straight to Miami, Florida one time, and that's a 24-hour drive from where we're at, and we did it nonstop, and then drove back. And as soon as we got here, we had a speaking engagement down in Forney. We went straight there, spoke, and didn't get home till after midnight. That was a lot.
It's a long day.
It's been glorious and beautiful. And it's because once I took me off the plate of worrying about what's going to happen to me, I can't go to jail, praying with an agenda of wanting it my way instead of the Lord's way. And finally just laid myself down and said, not my will, but yours. If I have to go into the prison system as a ministry tool to serve you, that's where I'm going to go.
Each day we learn to pray, Lord, put the next step in front of us.
Whatever I guarantee you, everybody watching is thinking, they're asking themselves, could I do that? Could I be that person?
Exactly. And
you guys, it's so powerful.
You can't. That's an excellent point. You can't. But through Christ, all things are possible. Yes. And I'm telling you, he really revealed himself and rose up in us in a mighty way we didn't anticipate. And it just gave us a confidence. And he knows how to do it for each individual. For me, I'd never had a dream before in my life that I could wake up and remember, let alone think it had a spiritual meaning. And yet he started doing that. He started giving me scriptures. I'd wake up in the night and go look it up, and it would be direct to this situation and crazy stuff that I always, when I heard other Christians doing it, I'm like, they're a kook.
Yeah, they're a weirdo. And, or anything. I've learned to call God the God of the ridiculous. And while that may sound a little blasphemous, keep in mind I have a master's degree in theology.
Oh.
But when I really got to looking at all of the crazy stuff he has done for us over the last 3.5 years specifically, they're hilarious. And that's why I call him the God of the ridiculous. You never know what he's got cooking and what he's going to do next if you will stay faithful and trust. That is the key. And it's difficult. It's very difficult some days.
And Julie, here's the deal. We got offered a plea deal, and it was our second one. And we knew there probably wouldn't be another one, and it was still horrible. We were going to have to admit to a felony that we did not commit. And I was sickened by it, but I had told the Lord, Mark's head of the house. You lead him to do it, I'm following. And meanwhile, I'm sick over it. Well, we didn't know what direction to go. I had a trusted, faithful Christian friend tell us, walk in the direction you're even subtly thinking. Just start walking in that direction. And if it's wrong, the Lord will put a block in your path and redirect you. Well, so that very night, Mark and I decided we're going to take the plea deal. 2 days later, I dropped out with a heart attack. I'm young for a heart attack. Okay, I'm not young, but I'm young for a heart attack. And anyway, while in the hospital, Mark brings up the paperwork. It came in for the plea deal. And I'm reading the plea deal and realizing I can't say this. I can't agree to this.
We realized we were going to have to lie to take the plea deal, and we were making a deal with the devil. That is exactly the sense that we got.
But the reason we had that sense is because while we're reading through the paperwork, he gets a phone call from his sister, and she tells him, brother, I don't know if you knew it, but the FBI's been visiting me and embarrassing me, coming around all my neighbors, and has suggested that I get you to take the plea deal if I know what's best for me.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
You got a security clearance, and they mention that we know you have a security clearance, and you might want to get your brother to take this plea deal. You might want to talk to him about it.
So now we know we're dealing with the devil.
Yep.
And you don't make deals with the devil. So we went, that's what shifted everything. We were all in. Christ, this is you. You stand for truth. You've told us to stand for truth. You've told us not to walk in fear. You command it daily. We are all in. And at that point, it was game on like Donkey Kong, because we knew that we have no other alternative. So see, we tend to justify things in our head, but when you have nothing else but Jesus Christ, of course you're going to stand firm on that. And that's where they brought us to.
Yep. And that's where we're at now. I mean, we're both now unemployed. We're waiting on sentencing. Our original sentencing date was supposed to be May 24th.
Oh, wait, go back. So go back to your February or March, you had your trial.
Yes.
That was, February was our trial. And, interesting, for 3 years, we roamed about this country at our free will. And so we get convicted, and we are allowed to roam around D.C. openly.
Wait. I'm sorry. I still have to cut you off. You got convicted. So we've just heard your story. They have video. And somehow a jury who's laughing at the police officers still finds you guilty. Is it a jury of peers? Like, is it a jury of police officers? What the heck's going on?
Okay, we're in Texas. There are no peers in D.C.
Yeah.
They have been living under a police state for probably 25 years, not even knowing it. They are a frog that got boiled in the pot. And so that is the first thing I tell people. The second thing is, we don't know, and we may never know, I don't know, but we don't know the intimidation they're under. But I can tell you the common sense intimidation they're under. If you're working at a job, that's 97% Democratic voters, okay? In D.C. And you go to your job, and you have been missing work because you're in a jury trial, and then you come back afterward and tell them that you did not find a J6er guilty for attacking their city.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to keep your job, or are you going to get to keep renting your house?
What's worse is when the jury verdicts were being read, one of the jurors was crying.
She kept looking at us like she was trying to tell us, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I believe she had the Holy Spirit on her.
As a J6er, we are guaranteed a conviction.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. It does not matter.
And did you know that going into the trial?
Yes.
Were you braced for that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We fully knew that. We fully understood what was going to happen. It would have been a shock had they found us not guilty on even one charge.
Okay.
So anyway,
I'll give you an example. I gotta jump in. I gotta give you an example. The 1752 charge is interfering with interstate commerce.
yes.
That is because Merle Bowser, a family member of hers, is
One of the judges, Merle Bowser.
no,
The governor or the mayor. Sorry.
mayor. One of her family members runs a Safeway there in D.C. She told them to shut it down and did a 6 p.m. curfew. So because they lost money for having to close early at 6
3
p.m.,
hours.
we're now considered, liable for that.
Violating
You've got
interstate.
to be kidding me.
Even though during our trial, the pro-BLM group shut down the bridge over the Mississippi River there in Nashville, or Memphis, shut it down for half a day, and nothing happened.
Well, not to mention they run into stores and steal whatever they want. Nobody stops them.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
Wait, it gets sweeter than that. So then,
It gets weirder than that.
part of one of those charges is that
I couldn't hear Fran. Wait, what did you say,
I
Fran?
said it gets weirder than that.
Yes. So one of the charges, in order to convict us of it, had to prove that we knew Mike Pence was going to be speaking or going to be in the Capitol at 1 p.m. They couldn't prove it. So ironically, the jurors, while out on deliberation, brought us in to ask a question, and they handed a note to the judge. And the question was, can we use the Rudy Giuliani speech as evidence in their case? Well, my first question was, how'd you even know there was a speech? And my second question was, why do you need to see the whole thing? So the judge determined that since we were there by our own admission till 30 minutes before the end of Trump's speech, then anything used before that can be used as a decision, as part of the evidence.
Even though we were a half mile away.
So we were at the Washington Monument. All we heard was reverb on the speakers, and we could see them on the jumbotrons, but couldn't decipher what they're saying. They used the last 30 minutes of the Giuliani speech where he said Mike Pence will be in the Capitol at 1 p.m. to certify the votes. They used that against us to convict us on that charge.
Yep.
Wow.
And we didn't even know it was in there.
Yeah.
Another charge we were convicted on, one of the felonies. So we got 4 felonies, now 3. But one of the felonies was the 1512 that y'all might have heard about. The Supreme Court just ruled on it back in June or right the 1st of July. That is the Enron paper shredding charge. And they applied that to more than 350 of us J6ers. That is interrupting Congress during a official proceeding. And it was developed from Enron. Y'all remember back in the 80s.
Enron, yeah.
Yeah. And so, they morphed that to fit us J6ers. And the Supreme Court rightly ruled that, no, you can't use that in this case because they didn't have paper shredders with them. And
it's literally a evidence protecting charge that they tried to use it against the January 6th defendants as a protection of Congress, which would have caused us to lose our First Amendment right to protest if they had not already.
Every American, it would have totally removed your right to protest anything.
So this is how vague and nasty they're trying to get these convictions on these charges. And that's why we share them, is because we always knew a justice system that looked at all the evidence and people had, determined an answer based off evidence. That was not what we experienced in the courtroom. The decision was made when we walked in there.
Yeah.
And that's why I use that example of the Rudy Giuliani, because if they didn't already have that evidence, what would have made them question whether they could use it? Had they not already been spoken to by someone?
They didn't ask for Louis Gohmert's. They didn't ask for Trump Jr. or Trump's or anyone else's. They specifically asked for Giuliani's.
Yeah.
Who tipped them off? Because we didn't even know.
We didn't know.
Until after we watched it, later after our trial. But anyway, we were found guilty on all 9 charges, 4 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. And now one of that felonies has dropped off, the 1512. But, at the time we were looking at over 50 years in prison. The DOJ is recommending 10. And we've been through about 5 different sentencing dates now. And we got notice the other day that the government and our defense attorneys have motioned the judge to extend that to late October, early November. So we're currently on house arrest and,
okay. So wait, sorry. I just want to make sure I have this right. So you had your trial in February and there have been 4 or 5 attempts to, okay. So you lost your trial, you're found guilty, and now you're waiting for another trial that tells you what your punishment is. They keep canceling it. And your next one is going to be late October, early November. So you're just in limbo at home. And is it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, it's a good thing we're not in prison. We can't work. So we're, just relying on the savings that we had left.
Wow.
It's been miraculous.
Wait, have you not been able to work for 4 years then? 3.5 years?
Just one. She left her job in July due to medical reasons. And I was let go from my job in October because we were just traveling so much. I wasn't there.
Sure.
So, I agree with him. I was surprised that my boss kept me on as long as he did.
We decided we were all in with our nonprofit at all costs because to sacrifice for our brother, we felt like was more important than our own cause at this point. Here's the deal, guys, and this is the painful part of our message. It's us right now, but they're coming after you.
Yes.
They've used this to break down our Constitution. We are considered domestic terrorists. When we fly, they all but rape us to search us. And that's what's so important is who got to determine I'm a domestic terrorist. All because I disagreed with the decision of our government and thought I had the right to protest. People need to understand that we're in a very dangerous time, and that's why it's worthwhile for our life to lay it down for this cause, because if we let it happen, they're going to take this nation. They may have already won. We don't even know. All I know is God wins in the end, and I'm on his team.
That's something that, honestly, I think about all the time. So we've been doing True Texas Project for 15 years. And so literally for 15 years, I have had to step back and from time to time think, what if they came after me? What if they falsely accused me of something? Who would stand with me? And it haunts me because I've seen it happen to friends where, oh, well, he had a big mouth and he got himself in trouble. Or, Julie, she's always just, she's a little over the top, maybe a little too passionate, and she kind of got what she deserved. And I'm going to back off because I don't want it to happen to me.
Well, and that's the issues that we've had as J6ers, as all J6ers have, is there's a large group that has come alongside of us and helped. And God bless them for, supporting not only Jaleesa and I, but all J6ers and all the work that's been done. But then there's also people, like saying that, well, they shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't have, they're getting what they're deserving and all that. And it's like, people, you don't grasp what's going on.
They don't know the Constitution to even make a comment.
Well, shouldn't our congressman, at the very least, shouldn't you expect the Ted Cruz's and even John, who's a piece of crap? Like, what are you doing?
We started on Ted Cruz because he and his dad run from me and her. When we do an event and they're there, they will run and hide from us.
Oh, don't tell me that.
It's so fake. And that's a pet peeve of mine because, listen, I've heard everybody under the sun when American Patriot Relief confronts them, what are you doing for the January 6th defendants? And well, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. I've tried, blah, blah. You're a liar. I will tell it to the camera. You're a liar, because they could have withheld the purse by refusing a new budget.
Okay.
And when everybody starts begging for mercy, then we clean it up. They could have released 42 January 6th defendants that are being held hostage in the D.C. jail.
When Republicans took Congress, they could have released them right away.
Out of that prison, that one prison, just to prove the point that we're not going to let you buy with it. We're in on this. We're putting a stop on it. They didn't do that either.
No.
They won't speak out publicly. You've got about 5 of them that showboat to look like they care about us.
I give props a little bit to Matt Gaetz,
Good.
but
Okay.
we are fundraising prop for him, because every time he talks about J6ers, it's always donate to me and I'll help fight them. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the same way.
And the thing of it is, they then turned around and funded for these IRS agents. They then turned around and funded the FBI.
Getting a new headquarters.
And then my number one question that I've been throwing out to people, they have been holding all these hearings, confronting Mayorkas, confronting all these different people. They catch them in perjury and then say, great, thank you, have a great day.
Right.
Why did they not call the sergeant of arms and say, arrest them right now for perjury?
The committee heads, what are they? They just write sternly written letters, and that's good enough.
You big meanie head for hurting my feelings. It's crap.
Yeah.
It's crap. That's where I get angry. If I had to pinpoint one group that has done the most damage to me and Mark personally, I would blame Congress.
Republicans in Congress.
They failed at saving innocent lives and are watching us rot.
Our own Congressman, Ronnie Jackson, wouldn't even talk to me until about 3 months ago. A couple of people in Texas were really, really hassling him, and he had a low-level staffer call me and get the story. I've heard nothing else from him.
It's
our own
a tragedy.
Congressman, Ronnie Jackson, the big MAGA, Trump-loving, Trump doctor, the whole 9 yards.
So do you have hope that, we're gonna win and Trump's gonna take office and everything's gonna be fixed? Is that a false hope, you think?
That's a strong question.
Yeah.
Our hope
multifaceted.
isn't found there. Yeah, our hope is not found there. Our hope is found in Christ. Do I want to see Trump back in office? Absolutely. Do I think there's hope for the J6ers if he goes back in? Absolutely.
We have a group called the J6 Pardon Group. We're very closely tied with them, and they have written basically a dossier on every J6er, and it's authored towards Trump, and Trump has it now, but it is basically explaining who we are, who we were before J6, what happened on J6, and why we should be pardoned or not. And that's all it is. And so Trump has to take that and then action upon it. I'm okay with him pardoning every single J6er, even the ones who did wrong, or even the ones who were Fed informants that we know are in fact Fed informants now, because everybody's rights were violated.
We were literally thrown, like putting red ants and black ants in a jar. I love how David Summerall says this will stop hate. And they shook the jar and got us all fighting and then want to blame it on us. And the reality is January 6th was a complete setup and our civil rights have been violated. And I tell people all the time, what more do you need to know? I mean, really. I don't need the personal story of who did what, who threw a water bottle, who didn't, who punched a cop and who didn't. I could care less at this point. They're being held hostage on American soil.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about yet, maybe we should, about the prison time and how they were treated without charges and for how long and not being able to communicate.
Still have it going on.
Yes. There's still some J6ers that have been in there since day one who have not been to trial.
They have not been found guilty. They're still picking them up constantly. We had 4 over the weekend. The FBI is coming onto private property and beating down your front door, threatening your wife and children. We've had 2 women miscarry their babies from this raid. Okay, this is an atrocity. And I am so ashamed of the American people that they then want to sit there and go, well, you threw a water bottle, or you punched a cop, or you stole a riot shield. Grow up. There's lives in danger on the line.
That's why these documentaries that have come out are important. So we have, there's actually a bunch of them now. So Capital Punishment was the first one. It was like 6 months later. Nick Searcy and Chris Burgart did it. And then they've also done one more recently that Jaleese and I are in that is called
The War on Truth.
War on Truth. And then David Summerall with Stop Hate. You can go to stophate.com and see several of his documentaries.
Especially a True Timeline of
True
J6.
Timeline of J6. It actually goes through, and this is what everything going on at this point in time at J6, as well as Bloody Hill that he has. There are so many documentaries that people can educate themselves. They can learn about, see the actual video at Stop Hate of Lila Morris beating Roseanne Boylan to death.
CNN actually broke that story.
And then they...
Why would we be lying about it if it broke from CNN?
Yep.
Right.
But the people aren't willing to even research this stuff. And it really scares me for them. Listen, our plight is already laid out before us. What do I have to gain or lose by speaking out at this point if it wasn't out of sheer love for the American people in our country? That's what I stand to gain or lose. Every time I speak out, they're increasing my sentencing.
Yep.
Okay.
So actually, let's talk about that because so you're now waiting until late October, early November. If Trump wins, we're hoping for a pardon. Worst case scenario is you go to this sentencing trial and find out what?
We find out we get potentially up to 10 years.
And they take us into custody right then.
Take us into custody right then.
So the 2 of you will be separated for 10 years in prison for praying on the White House lawn.
That's right.
Which is all verifiable by video.
Yep.
Absolutely.
There's no appeal at that point. There's no...
we can, but it's appealed in D.C. by the same 3 judges that have ruled every other J6 case being,
And you guys are sitting here smiling with a great attitude, and that is remarkable.
Amazing. What else can you do?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I can go through this and I can focus on what our country is doing. Or I can look at the true picture of it, that this is a war of good and evil.
Yes.
They don't know they're being deceived.
Yeah.
They think they're doing right. I remember a time in my life when I was lost. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. So all you can do is pray for them for their own eternal life and then pray that by chance it would happen in time to save us. But I've got to trust in the Lord. I belong to him. It wasn't my life in the first place. He shared Mark with me. So if he's allowing this to happen in my life, you've got to assume this is a better alternative because he is a good and gracious God.
Yeah.
So if this is being allowed to happen, it is because it has to happen for what's best for our country and each individual.
If we're going to save this nation, I'm okay being the bloody tip of the spear.
Golly.
And she's the same way. And you talk to most J6ers, they will all agree the same thing. If it saves this nation. And
how about your family? You have kids, grandkids?
We have 3 kids. We have 6 grandkids. One of them we've never seen because we've been on house arrest since he's been born. They're obviously very upset, all 3 of them, about losing their mom and dad potentially up to 10 years.
And grandma and grandpa.
Yeah.
10 years is a long time in the life of a kid.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
we'll miss. I've got an 8-year-old granddaughter. She'll be 18.
Yeah.
That's a devastating thought. I'll have a 10-year-old grandchild I've never met. There's things like that you look at that is so painful and so sad, but I just believe I've been called to something higher. The shirt I'm wearing, on the back of it, it says, Jesus was accused of insurrection too. And that's true. He has already walked through this. So he showed us how to walk through it. And it's by loving your brother more than yourself.
Yep.
It's what we're called to. It's about standing on truth. And we raised our children with that written on our doorpost. We woke up to morning devotions. We were in church when the doors were open. We spoke Christ to them. Did we do it right all the time? No, I'd cuss like a sailor. Are you kidding? They drove me up a wall, but I did the best that I could. And that's the message I hope that people get. You can't get outside of God's desire for your life. He loves you. He's not sitting here, well, you said that cuss word. I saw it. That's not our God. We get so caught up in our words and our actions that you're doing things less than perfect. It's because you're doing it in your own will. But with God, all things are possible. And so our children know this. They're hurt. They're scared. Some more than others. They have their ups and downs too. But they're in full support, best I can tell. They have never, they've never said they're mad at us. Now my son said, something that cut me to the core, but it was truth. And
it was early on.
And it was early on. And he just said, Mom, I don't understand why it had to be you. And I can't answer that. I don't have that answer. All I know is this is what the Lord has called, and I will obey the call.
It's a scary valley to go through. It's terrifying at times.
Mm-hmm.
But, with Christ in our hearts and the mission that we're on, we are truly having a lot of fun doing it. We get to serve. He said, be my hands and feet. Serve others.
We have found that is on both of our heart. Like nothing gives us more joy than helping people.
And, when we go do an event, or when we were able to do events for American Patriot Relief, and say it was a really good event and we took in several $1,000s at that event, the joy that we had knowing we're going to give every penny of that away. American Patriot Relief, we're 100% volunteer. We even traveled on our own cost, and everybody else who travels for American Patriot Relief does it on their own dime. We don't reimburse. But the joy that we had knowing that we had now another couple of $1,000s that maybe we can save a house, or we can do this with it, or we can do that with it. And, we purposely didn't create a machine we had to feed so that we could give every bit of the money away. And it's been a ball.
Well, and I would say that is the answer to the why. Why you, Mom? Like, why is it you? Well, because you guys are faithful. You're doing the right things as hard as it is. You have this amazing testimony that I guarantee you is going to change lives. And I really hope that your grandkids, the ones that are turning 8, 9, 10, if you're in prison, watch this video and see your heart and hear your testimony and are changed by it. Even if they don't get to see you personally, they will know who you are.
Julie, I think that's what made me go all in on this, is I thought about my children and my grandchildren. If we are Bible-believing people, we know what Revelation says. And that means that we know how this is going to end up. What if right now we're all being separated like sheep and goats, like the scripture tells us? And how we respond to this challenge is going to tell our children how to respond when it's their turn, and it's life and death, eternal life and death.
And, I know a lot of people have asked themselves a question, or you've seen the meme on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but what would you do during the Holocaust? Well, I can answer that question for you. What are you doing right now? Are you sitting back saying, well, them Jews shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z, or you narking on the Jews, pointing them out, or, are you getting in there and trying to help them?
I think that is a perfect segue, because we have something that we can actually ask people to do. And we need to wrap up because, we've been chatting a long time and it's such a compelling story. And I know it's going to motivate people to action. So what is this new thing that we're now aware of that we can potentially do to help?
Well, I'm always asking people to go to AmericanPatriotRelief.org and donate or volunteer. But now I have kind of stumbled into a situation where I really believe this is important enough for the people for American Patriot Relief to kind of redirect our attention a little bit. Funds are still going to the J6ers. but we are asking for volunteers because James O'Keefe with OMG has started investigating Act Blue. Act Blue. And he released a story that really shocked me because, let's face it, most January 6th defendants were at the Capitol that day because of a stolen election. I think there's enough evidence out that most anybody with an eighth of a brain has figured out the election was indeed stolen. So with that, he actually started pulling Act Blue records to realize money is getting funneled through that PAC under usually elderly people's names. And it's happening in very, very small amounts for many, many times, right? And it's millions of dollars, millions upon millions of dollars getting funneled into the Democratic Party. I would suspect probably from George Soros. So I contacted
Let me stop you there. Fran, yesterday you gave me an example of like, I want people to understand what's Act Blue and what exactly did you see when you looked into it?
It's a PAC. And I watched one of James O'Keefe's videos where he interviewed a lady because he had FEC records showing that she had donated over $157,000 over a long period of time in small increments over and over and over again. And she had no knowledge of this whatsoever. And, she's not a wealthy woman. She's a retired educator. So she kind of knows what she's doing as well, So she was as shocked as anyone to find out that money in her name had been donated. Now, what I don't understand is whether her credit cards were hacked, because I don't think that's what happened, because I don't think she literally lost the money. But I think her identities are being stolen and being used to make donations, like, somebody makes a donation to Hillary, or what's her name? Kamala Harris. I'm sorry. In the name of Fran Rhodes, over and over and over again. And I have no knowledge that that's being done. So that was what I got from the video I watched.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. And that is called smurfing. So the money was not hers. She did not donate it to the party. And what happened is it would be like, Julie, you decided you wanted to donate $6 million to Kamala Harris, but you can't legally do that because of that amount of money, or maybe because you don't live in this country. And so you find American names to funnel that money through in small increments, because once it's a certain level, of course, you have to report all these details. So that is what we've actually started investigating. Is I've asked for them to show me how this process is done. I have all the instructions here.
So you're saying you asked James O'Keefe's organization to show you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's actually called Operation Smurf Hunting.
Yes.
Because they're two. That's hilarious.
What I think they're doing is they're getting aggregators, donation aggregators, and they're using AI to scour the voting records to find Democratic voters, and they're creating Act Blue accounts for them.
It can be Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, or anybody.
That's the bigger atrocity, is you'd never want any of your money to go to the Democratic Party, and yet they're using your name to funnel millions into there, and you don't even know it. So we get on the FEC website, we research, we're looking at a specific zip code right now, and we research the names. You start seeing anomalies right away. Like, why would you donate $3 and $2 on the same day, different transactions?
And the next day do the same thing, and the next day the same thing, and the next day, on and on and on, as far back as you can go, that they're doing these small, she's done a lot of research last night, but from like $1 up to $25 or even $50 several times a day for months and months or years on end.
Since 2019.
So we fit in. Where do the people, what do we do?
So we are asking for volunteers. Me and Mark cannot go knock on these people's door. We're going to do exactly what James O'Keefe has been doing. We're asking to help us gather this data off the FEC website. I'll do a Zoom call to train on it. If they will simply contact AmericanPatriotRelief.org, to contact us, say, I'd like to be a volunteer for the Smurfing. You can put Operation Smurf. And we will contact you and teach you how to pull the records and investigate. And then we're going to cordon off areas to go knock on those doors. Video. These people aren't bad people. These are people like you and me. They're victims. And so they have a right to know they've been victimized. And knock on the door on video and say, hey, did you donate $153,000 this year to the Democratic Party to Act Blue? And of course, James O'Keefe's organization is reporting that 95% are going to tell you no, that they did not, because they didn't. So that's how big this is. So guys, this will fund election fraud. So at that point, you video, you ask them, did you donate this money? If they say no, do you mind providing us bank records? We will redact out your information and try to get those bank records, because that is something that will be pursuable by Ken Paxton.
And the O'Keefe organization, OMG, is working with Paxton, working with other states' attorneys generals to go after Act Blue. But he needs people on the ground. And that's why, Julie, I came to you as American Patriot Relief to try to partner with TTP. And because y'all have an organization in Texas that we don't have. We have one all over the nation, but it's handfuls of people, whereas y'all have a full state organization. So we need TTP's help, as well as any other conservative group out there, to go after this. As far as J6ers, it's not going to help me and Jaleesa any, but it's going to help America as a whole. And we need to put an end to this. And, Republicans have the same sort of organization. Democrats is Act Blue. Republicans are Win Red. I know y'all are familiar with it, and probably most of the people that watch this will be. They may be doing the same thing too. I don't know.
We don't know.
But we know that Act Blue is definitely doing some very shady things right now. So.
And honestly, I always try to look at it completely from all sides, but it could be that Act Blue doesn't realize this is occurring. If somebody's giving your name and address and saying, I want to donate daily, who's going to say no to money, right?
Right. So, honestly, that's really not for us to determine. That's where Ken Paxton steps in.
Right.
And there's
right.
the hero.
Our job is just to expose the facts, just to get the names and the story going on. And I thought, since, I'd like to start in Dallas County. That has been a hot spot along with Houston, but I committed to start in Dallas County. So if anybody's interested, we sure are needing the volunteers. And the researching is pretty easy. I figured it out last night. There's still some details I'm still unclear about that I'm going to double check with the OMG team to clarify. But we are calling and asking for these volunteers. You do not have to be part of one of these organizations. If you feel so led, I would be especially honored that you would go and knock on some doors on behalf of me and Mark while we're on home confinement.
Okay.
And if somebody wants to do this, who do they contact? Mark and Jaleesa, do we contact you? Do we contact OMG? What do we do?
Contact AmericanPatriotRelief.org. Go to the Contact Us button that you will find on the hamburger on the top left, and say that you would like to go on the Smurf hunt.
Okay. And I think we have one more action item besides doing that, which would be awesome to have an army of true Texans helping you. I really just want to ask everybody to be praying for you guys, for your upcoming court date. Just for you to continue to have such a strong testimony. Like, I don't even want to pray for God to take it away, because you're doing such amazing things. So,
well, we're ready for it to end. We
yes,
would love
I bet.
slam the gavel and throw out everything. He can.
Yeah.
Short of that, whatever God leads us on the next step, and whatever that is.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, we have loved having this conversation. I have to say, this is probably my favorite podcast that we've done to date. I think it's so important. But as we always end up, I don't know if you guys have a glass with you, but we are going to make a toast here.
I forgot mine.
Did you forget your glass, Fran? Okay, well, that's okay. Here's to Texas.
And here's to true Texans.
All right. Thanks, everybody.